Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us again. It's Luke here from Nuaware. For those that don't know Nuaware, we are a specialist partner in the cloud native space, helping organizations adopt new technologies. I've been fortunate enough to be able to speak to some leading minds in the market from different vendors and partners that we have. And kindly joining me today is Nigel Kersten from Puppet, Field CTO. Thank you very much for being here, Nigel.
It's good to be here, Luke.
Excellent. We keep these quite light, as people probably know, so I'll dive straight in with some questions and go from there. So I used to work at Puppet, so I know a fair bit, and I know Nigel fairly well. Nigel's been at Puppet longer than that, so I thought it's good to go back historically. So Puppet, it's been there really from the beginning. Pioneering DevOps really and moving to this new way of computing. In your experience, how have customer conversations changed during that time?
Yeah, so I think the biggest one would have to be, 10 years ago when I joined Puppet, you were having to sell people on the idea of automated config management, and you're particularly having to sell them on the idea of using a DSL to describe infrastructure. And if you look at the variance between, 10 years ago when people were like, well, I write shell scripts, my shell scripts are great, to now everyone, the industry making jokes about YAML engineers. I think everyone's realized that, declaring the state you should manage your infrastructure and letting software work it out, you no longer have to convince customers about that. And even, 10 years ago was an awful lot of conversations of, wait, what is DevOps? Why would I want to do that? And more, I think we've gone all the way through the curve where we now have people who have no idea what it is, but they know they want some.
Yeah, fair enough. So I guess on that, from the tooling side of things, Puppet's always, its roots have been in config management. There's been this new wave of Docker and Kubernetes and all the associated things and all the cloud provider offerings, that sort of stuff. Has your role changed from config management through to other things?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that's probably worth pointing out is 10 years ago, it was a lot of cutting edge folks. And, I'm definitely not disparaging any of my current customers, but 10 years ago was people who were trying to push the state of the art forward in terms of tooling they're adopting. And as Puppet's grown up as a company and our toolings, software's become more enterprise, we're naturally sort of just dealing with bigger, more conservative companies that have different kinds of problems. So as we've moved towards the cloud, I think one of the things I've found really interesting is there's almost a disconnect, and there's a difficult line to tread because you don't want to sound like a cloud skeptic because the cloud's undoubtedly changed everything. Most people are not using the cloud in a way other than essentially a managed service virtualization layer. Like, most of the companies we deal with, most of their work is still at the EC2 level, S3, and it's just someone's taken away the operational burden. So I think we see a lot of the greenfield work being, containers, Kubernetes, again, an undeniable wave that's coming. I think in the enterprise space, I don't think people have really worked out how to deal with all of their regulatory burdens, their compliance, the skills of their staff. And I think this is what makes the current time so exciting, is because the promise of cloud native is so huge and the people who are getting value out of it are getting so much value. But what does it look like to bring everyone else along for the ride? And is it going to end up being, I guess, more interesting than the shift to the public cloud? Because for a lot of companies, the shift to public cloud just meant I'm going to stop running VMware on premise and I'm going to instead pay Amazon on a subscription basis to handle all of these workloads. And so I don't think companies have really taken advantage of that. The other big change I'd say is that it's sort of cultural, that the people who've started using the cloud, using service-oriented architecture and containers, they're used to self-service, they're used to APIs, there's a different expectation. And so the thing that I think has been really positive is even internal IT departments in the most, conservative, slow to change organizations in the world, no one really thinks it's good enough to put a ticket in, ask for something to happen, wait a week for that to happen, find out it didn't happen right. Everyone's just like, no, give me a self-service interface, give me an API, let me wire it up to CI/CD or whatever. And I think that's super positive.
Cool. No, that's great. And sticking with the theme of automation, to someone from Puppet, automation is still behind all of that, right? There's different ways of doing it and things like that. Where do you see things going next? We've got this self-service type desire and sometimes sometimes delivery from organizations. What's next? How do you improve on that? How do you improve on your software delivery?
Yeah, so I think, self-service interfaces are one. I think one of the things we're going to see more and more is we see the sort of next big battleground as really being event-driven workflows. Because if you look at, classic config management, when you're worried about desired state on a long-running system, you don't have the same concern if you've got a short-lived container. If that thing's only lasting hours, days at most, you just don't have the same kinds of concerns, particularly if you're using an immutable approach to infrastructure. But then you've sort of pushed the problem up a level. So, I think it's similar to when virtualization came out. Lots of people were like, well, it's going to put sysadmins out of a job because you don't need them racking and stacking servers anymore. But we didn't. It just turned out the virtualization meant we created way more machines than we ever had before, and sysadmins moved higher up the stack. I think that's the sort of thing we're seeing more and more. And the next big battleground is going to be, how do you take all of these SaaS services, all of these APIs, all of these things that people are building on Kubernetes, all of the work that people are doing, and tie it together so it's useful for the rest of the business and not just sort of a small group of high priests of Kubernetes.
Okay, and Puppet's role within that. So I was a sales mercenary back in the day, selling Puppet Enterprise. For a long time, Puppet has been known for Puppet, right? The automation open source tool. As the company's grown and as the market has changed, you guys have added other offerings to what you can provide for your customers. Are you able just to give an overview of what?
So, Puppet Enterprise is still our bread and butter, and it's, powering lots and lots of the Fortune 500 around the world. But the new things we came out with Puppet Remediate, because we saw this problem where security teams were running their scanners, producing a list of vulnerabilities, handing over a spreadsheet to operations teams. And there was this real disconnect between the two. There wasn't a really good automated solution to go, show me all of the context around your infrastructure, show me the vulnerability, and give me an easy way to remediate those vulnerabilities. Even if I'm not all in on config management and 99% automated, you can use Puppet Remediate to go and solve those problems. So it's a very targeted solution that we're really proud of. The other big one is CD for PE, which is essentially continuous delivery for Puppet Enterprise. And so if you're doing automation, it basically gives you an infrastructure designed way of going, what's the impact of this going to be? Can I run infrastructure tests on this? So it's similar to a lot of the work you see people do with CloudBees and Jenkins and Bamboo and all of these things, but much more focused. But the big news was Puppet Relay, relay.sh, which you can go and sign up for now in the public beta. And that is us trying to bring that same kind of composable modular thing that Puppet's really good at. Because one of the good things about Puppet was you could make use of other people's code. So if I wrote an Apache module, someone else could come along and go, well, I'm going to make a LAMP stack module that uses that Apache module. And being able to have composable infrastructure code like that, I think, was the real game changer. We're taking that same approach for event-driven workflows. So you can describe them in YAML. Each plugin is a container. It's a very, very modern architecture. And so you can start to tie these things together. So you can have things like responding to an event, say from your monitoring system, that goes and sends a message to Slack, opens up a ticket in Jira, perhaps provisions an instance in EC2, maybe goes and grabs some data that's living in Google, and being able to tie all of these things together in a workflow so that not just so that you can take advantage of it, but in a modular way. So I can go, hey, Luke, here's this chunk of code that I wrote that interacts with our security team and fires off an alert, fires a ticket, changes the DMZ rules. You can go and use this now for a different kind of incident response.
Okay. So how are people doing that at the moment? Is this a replacement for something which is out there, or is this brand new?
We've been using the phrase digital duct tape. There's sort of everyone out there is basically just like gluing stuff together. We're seeing, it feels really similar to the early days of config management and automation, where what you're competing with is the fact that lots of people have just homegrown solutions and no one's really sharing things with each other. And that's one of the things I think we've seen and why we decided to enter this market was that no one's really building on each other. Everyone's just reinventing the wheel over and over again. So if you're looking for, I guess, a quick analogy on what it is, it's if you've ever used Zapier or if this, then that, it's like if this, then that for DevOps, being able to glue together all of these different cloud services in a shareable way using workflows.
Cool. All right, brilliant. I think that's all the questions I have, to be honest. I guess one more, Relay. People able to just download it and use it? Is it free? Open?
It's a SaaS. So it's a SaaS. We haven't worked out a billing model yet, but there'll certainly be a free tier. but we're very much taking a sort of lean, agile approach to this. So you can go sign up for free now. Come and join us on the Puppet community Slack. There's a relay room where the developers are happy to work on things with people. So there'll definitely be a free tier, and it will probably be following a similar process of most products of charging for enterprise features above a certain amount.
Cool. Brilliant. Well, Nigel, thank you very much. Entertaining to talk to you as always. Thank you to everybody else for joining us, and stay tuned. Hopefully I can arm twist a few other people to give me some of their valuable time and have a chat with me about what's going on at the moment. So thank you very much, and speak soon.
Cheers.